For years, he believed she could never have children. But after nearly 2 decades apart, he saw her with 4 young adults who looked eerily familiar. What he discovered next changed everything. Michael Hayes had long buried the past. 19 years was enough time to move on, or so he thought. But the moment he stepped into the crowded café and saw her, his entire world shifted. Isabelle, his ex-wife, the woman he had once loved more than anything, the woman he had lost when they realized she couldn't have children. Infertility had shattered their dreams, and their marriage. His heart pounded as he took a step forward, ready to say something. But then he saw them. 4 young adults sat around her table, laughing, chatting, completely at ease. And the strangest part? They looked just like him. Michael froze. This wasn't possible. His breath hitched as his eyes darted between them, the way the oldest boy ran a hand through his hair, just like he did. The way the girl tilted her head in thought, just like Isabelle used to. His mind raced. Who were they? How did they exist? And more importantly, why had Isabelle never told him? As if sensing his stare, Isabelle finally looked up. Their eyes met, and in that instant, he knew. She had been keeping a life-changing secret. Michael's pulse thundered in his ears as Isabelle's eyes locked onto his. Shock, guilt, panic. A storm of emotions flashed across her face. The 4 young adults continued talking, unaware of the tension suddenly filling the café. Michael took a shaky step forward. Isabelle. She inhaled sharply, her fingers tightening around her coffee cup. Michael, His gaze flickered back to the kids. No, young adults. They had to be at least 18 or 19. His chest tightened. The timeline didn't make sense. His voice was low, unsteady. Who are they? Isabelle swallowed hard. For a moment she looked like she wanted to run. Then, as if bracing herself, she exhaled and turned to the 4 young people at her table. Kids, she said softly, there's someone I want you to meet. 4 sets of curious eyes turned to Michael. The oldest boy studied him, his brows furrowing. Wait, I know you. Michael's breath caught. No, this wasn't possible. The girl sitting next to him, the one with Isabelle's eyes but his sharp jawline, tilted her head. I've seen your picture, she murmured. Then her eyes widened. Mum, is this him? Michael's world tilted. Mum? His gaze snapped back to Isabelle, his voice barely above a whisper. Isabelle, tell me the truth. Her eyes glistened with tears. And then she did. Michael, they're yours. Michael felt the ground shift beneath him. Yours. The word echoed in his head, rattling him to his core. His throat went dry. That's impossible. You... He struggled to form the words. You couldn't have children. Isabelle swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around her coffee cup. That's what we thought. Michael shook his head. Number. This didn't make sense. After we separated, Isabelle said softly, I went to another specialist. I didn't expect anything, just closure, maybe a final answer. A sad smile flickered across her lips. But I wasn't infertile, Michael. The diagnosis was wrong. His chest constricted. You're saying... She exhaled. I found out I was pregnant 3 months after we split. Michael's breath hitched. 3 months. 19 years. 19 years believing he would never be a father. His eyes darted back to the 4 young adults at the table. His children. The boy closest to Isabelle, the one who had his exact smirk, spoke first. So, I'm guessing you 2 have some history. The girl beside him elbowed him. Really, Jake? That's your reaction? Michael let out a shaky breath. I don't... He turned back to Isabelle, his voice raw. Why didn't you tell me? Tears welled in her eyes. I wanted to, 1,000 times I wanted to, but you had already moved on. You were building your life, your career, and I was terrified. Michael's stomach twisted. She had carried this secret for nearly 2 decades. His gaze returned to his children. His children. I don't even know your names, he whispered. Isabelle hesitated, then nodded toward them one by one. Jake, Mia, Lucas, and Ellie. Michael let the names sink in. These weren't just strangers sitting before him. They were pieces of him. Jake, his confident smirk. Mia, her sharp, analytical stare. Lucas, tapping his fingers like Michael always did when thinking. Ellie, a nervous habit of biting her lip, just like Isabelle. His heart clenched. 19 years lost. He looked back at Isabelle, his voice shaking. What now? She blinked at him, uncertainty in her eyes. And then, Jake spoke again, his tone casual but firm. Well, how about we start with hello? Michael let out a shaky breath, his eyes flickering to each of their faces. Hello. It was such a simple word, and yet it carried the weight of 19 lost years. He swallowed hard and nodded, forcing his voice to steady. Hello. The 4 young adults exchanged glances. Then Ellie, the youngest, spoke first. Hi. Her voice was soft, uncertain, but there was curiosity in her eyes. Mia crossed her arms, studying him. So, you're our father? Michael exhaled. I guess I am. Lucas raised an eyebrow. You guess? Michael ran a hand through his hair, laughing nervously. This isn't exactly how I pictured meeting my kids for the first time. Jake smirked. Yeah, well, we didn't exactly picture meeting you at a café either. Michael chuckled, the tension in his chest loosening just a little. They were sharp, quick-witted, just like him. He turned to Isabelle, emotion tightening his throat. I missed everything. Her eyes softened. I know. Silence stretched between them, but this time it wasn't heavy with regret. It was filled with something else. Possibility. Michael cleared his throat. Look, I don't expect to make up for lost time overnight, but if you'll let me, I'd like to get to know you. Ellie smiled. That sounds nice. Lucas shrugged. Why not? Mia sighed but nodded. We deserve to hear your side of the story. Jake leaned back, smirking. Fine, but you're paying for lunch. Michael laughed, shaking his head. Deal. As they pulled chairs around the table, something in Michael's chest cracked open. He had walked into this cafe alone, but he wasn't leaving that way. And for the first time in 19 years, he had a family again. Over the next hour, Michael listened more than he spoke. He absorbed every detail. Jake's love for basketball, Mia's sharp mind for business, Lucas's passion for music, Ellie's dream of becoming a writer. Each story was a glimpse into a life he had missed, but a life he could still be part of. At one point, Ellie hesitated, then asked, So, what do we even call you? The table fell silent. Michael's heart pounded. Jake smirked. Yeah, Dad seems a little too soon. Michael chuckled, nodding. Fair enough. He exhaled, meeting their eyes. Call me whatever feels right. Mia studied him for a long moment. Michael, for now. His chest tightened. For now. It wasn't rejection. It was an opening, a chance. As they finished their meal, Jake leaned back with a satisfied sigh. Well, you kept your promise. Lunch was on you. Michael grinned, a small price to pay. Isabelle glanced at him, something unreadable in her expression. Gratitude, regret, hope. When the check arrived, Michael pulled out his wallet, but before handing over his card, he hesitated. He looked at them, his children. Then he met Isabelle's gaze. Can we do this again? Silence. Then, one by one, they nodded. His throat tightened. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. And for the first time in 19 years, Michael Hayes had something he thought he'd lost forever: a second chance.